guys.
Cool.
Oh, dude,
Uh,
Venom, you are the man. Oh, you're already subbed. I was like, can I gift a sub? Like, how do I do this? All right, I'll be right back.
I'm a little bit ahead of him, but I also have heirloom, so like everything dies in like 3 hits. I didn't think that he'd like the bombing quest that much because like we've had bombing quests since like 2008, so like I think a lot of the newness has worn off. But they were like pretty game changing when they added them. It just I take them for granted. Um, I think that's when we got them. Serious question. As someone who hasn't played WoW since Cataclysm, why would someone even want to play? So Classic was a good game. I mean, it took off at the time. So like it's not just nostalgia that's propelling Classic. There are also people who've never played Classic before that are liking it. Cataclysm marked a pretty significant change. Um, the the uh the reason you would come back now is this is a different game. This is not WoW Classic. WoW Retail and WoW Classic have diverted so far that we are looking at two very different games. At this point, Retail is the probably the largest active subscribed MMO in the world, and so like there's a big sense of community here, and there is as much, if not more, to do than 14, just through the sheer amount of resources that have been put in the game. Now, 14 is closing that gap rapidly. Even though they've dropped to 1 dungeon per patch and all of that, they are still closing that gap rapidly. So, like, WoW needs to get their act together if they don't want to get past. But that's what's great is like us as gamers win either way. It doesn't matter which game has more content. Like, it both of them rising to the occasion is good news. Within the community now, like they've revamped leveling. In my opinion, this leveling system might be the best MMORPG leveling system to date, in that it actually solves for what happens to a new player experience when you layer on 7.0, 9.0, 12.0, and beyond. So this kind of allows them to tell a cohesive story. This allows them to teach you to play. This allows them to advertise current content, which every game does, right? Everybody looks at Shadowbringers as what Final Fantasy 14 is, and then a new player doesn't get to play Shadowbringers. They get to play ARR, which was a great game for its time, but it's not what was in the marketing material. It's not what's being streamed on Twitch. It's not what they're reading about on Metacritic. It's not what all the hype's about, right? It was hype back then. And so pushing people into other content is odd. Um, so I think the reason to play it now is the reason you would pick up anything else. If you're actively sub to 14 and you pick up anything else, playing WoW Retail at this point is no different than you going trying Guild Wars 2, no different than you trying ESO. You're really probably just taking a vacation in another game with full intention of coming back. WoW drama is funny because the content creators overreact to everything. One of my big envies of WoW over 14 is the number of content creators. So of course there's people trying to like climb their way to the top. And so that drama does rise to the top, but like I really wish that we had as many creators as WoW. And so you get all kinds. And you don't I feel like in 14 I need to make an effort to like every single creator, and then if it really just doesn't connect, then I can move on. As opposed to like in WoW, I can just dismiss whole types of creators. There are just so many communities that are documented on the internet, and maybe 14 is better documented in other languages, but like there are just so many places that like the gold making community has like people that are different than each other to the point where they don't even like interact with each other, and like the RP community and the PvP community, and like there's just the elite rating community, and like the 14 community is just a lot smaller when it comes to content creation. um Final Fantasy 14 needs to find something to solve its problem soon, because no matter how much streamlining they do, they'll never match the new player experience now. Exactly. This raised the bar. Cutting the number of quests in ARR by 100 did put a band-aid on it, but it's only a band-aid. And WoW had done that same band-aid over and over, and at a certain point, WoW had so many expansions that they just started giving out jump potions that put you in a like trial type setting to mimic what they have now. But like it would be like doing you get a jump potion, you activate the jump potion on a character, it puts you into the Hall of the Novice, then rapid fire all your class quests, and then just releases you into basically the beginning of the current expansion. So like it wasn't perfect. This fixes all of the problems with the way WoW had been handling it, and this fixes all the ways that 14 is currently handling it. This is an utter game changer. Um, if Shadowlands is a complete failure of an expansion, if it is just marked down as the worst expansion ever added to the game, if all we get is the things we got in pre-patch, this will still be good for the long-term health of the game. The game can recover from a bad expansion. It has done it before. The things we got with pre-patch are utter game changes. I'm absolutely stoked. Is it realistic to start over WoW and start every main story quest? Um, yeah, yeah, they have achievements tied to it called Lore Master, so you can kind of track your progress. So the way it works now, so in WoW, like if you're a 14 player, you're probably going to want to have all your jobs because you kind of get in that habit of like, oh, I have a couple different jobs. So when you level a character, what we are going to see Brian do, and I don't want to spoil it here to make sure he's not back. So what we're going to see him do is we're going to see him go through this this island that gets him 1 to 10, and then for the sake of cohesiveness, they are going to force him into playing BFA. The reason for that is when we're not talking about Shadowbringers, we're talking about Stormblood, especially now that we're doing Boja. So anything that references previous expansion, a lot of times it's picking up off of where we left in Stormblood. So he needs to do that previous experience. So he'll be pushed into BFA, which means at the end of Shadowlands, that will become Shadowlands that a new player is pushed into. And then at the end of that, he'll be ready for Shadowlands. Now, should you create a second character, you'll have an option at the end of your 1 to 10 experience to do it again. Fine. Or pick an expansion of your choosing and play through that story. And they've scaled it so that playing through that expansion's experience will get you 10 to 50 every time. So you could go create a character for each expansion and experience it that way. Or you can always go back on a max level character and just one shot all the mobs and play through everything. So you have options on how to do it. But yes, absolutely. It's very, very reasonable. WoW doesn't have story in game. It does. It does. So starting with Wrath of the Lich King was the first time we had story, where throughout the process in various quests and dungeons, you would see the Lich King appear and say like, "Ha ha ha! You'll never catch me," and run off into the distance. Since then, they've gotten more and more storytelling. By the time you got to BFA, you actually have traditional like MSQ style quests, a little bit in Legion, but definitely in BFA, where you have at that point we've added role quests to the game when we had class order halls. We've tried a lot of the things that 14 has to a much smaller degree. Remember, 14 came from story-based ARPGs. WoW came from an RTS, so they are headed towards each other. It's taken 15 years, and they're still not directly over the top of each other. So like, it's definitely not as lore-based as 14, but there is lore. There 100% is lore, and there are books on the ground, and there is a universe being created. It does not force you to engage with it, but there is lore, and it all moves you along. And anytime you think there's not lore, go look at how frustrated the community is when the lore does something stupid.
Boom, 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 boom.